5 o'clock, I'd like to call the City of Fairhope Board of Adjustment meeting to order for March 18th, 2024. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our board to you.
Ryan Baker.
Donna Cook.
Anil Vera.
Kathy Slagle.
Frank Lamia.
Thank you. So our first order of business is approval of the minutes from November 20th. Y'all can remember that far back.
Make a motion to approve.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Our first order of business is BOA 24.02. It's a public hearing to consider the request of the applicant Laura Ashley Strickland, doing business as Insight Counseling on behalf of the owner, Don Mason, for the use not accounted for to operate a professional medical office on the property zoned as PUD. Property is located at 19973 State Highway 181, Suite B4. And staff will give us a presentation, please.
Okay, thanks. It's Michelle Melton. The applicant's here. Laura Ashley Strickland, like Anil said, is requesting a use not provided for in our use table. You guys have probably noticed there's several uses that aren't in there, but she desires to operate a mental health counseling office, and it's called Insight Counseling LLC at this location. So there it is, which you mentioned the address. And the one on the right is one of these commercial lots that you can see on this, which I'll come back to, but that's why that aerial's there. But that's the whole PUD. So, the Fairhope zoning ordinance does not provide for mental health counseling office. There's not even medical office in there. There's professional office, and there's clinics. So this one is not either one of those, and it's part of PUD, Moorhaven Village, which is ordinance number 1181, and it has a residential component, which is the larger one on the right, and it has 2 B4 business professional buildings shall be allowed. So that's in the uses for the PUD. This is what it looks like. And these are all established buildings. The residentials have been there for a while too. So it is, those 2 commercial parcels or buildings are B4. So the business professional district, it's intended to provide an opportunity for business established of a professional nature, and is restricted to offices and businesses which provide specific corporate functions or professional services to the general public. And then our ordinance goes on. Professional office is probably is the most relevant existing use for the requested use, and it is defined as a building occupied by profession and offering professional services to clients, customers, or patrons, which may involve occasional on-site contact with clients, customers, or patrons. Some examples that are listed as architect, accountant, real estate, engineer, lawyer, or, quote, other similar professions. And that's under the office use category. So the applicant's here, but we do recommend approval for this because it's a professional medical office. It's not considered a clinic. There's not going to be walk-ins. They have to have appointments. And also in our definition, which is in the staff report of a clinic, it's usually where the diagnosis takes place, where they're diagnosed, and the applicant will be seeing people post-diagnosis for the counseling. There's no diagnosis being done at the Insight Counseling. And then, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to kind of jump in at that moment. This is one case for one particular piece of property. I think sometimes either we acknowledge their shortcomings in our current ordinances and do make amendments to address those, or we kind of say, hey, they're working. So some of the nuances of this, as Michelle stated, we have professional office and then we have clinic, and clinic kind of describes everything medical. When you look around at other places, and we have a very limited list of uses in our zoning ordinance. When you look around at other places, there's other cities kind of have some more a different range instead of no medical at all, and then or a clinic, medical offices. sometimes it's how you define those. And I think this would fit within that scale. It's not the volume. You're not looking at like Doc in the Boxes or large clinics or methadone counseling. There's certain uses you have to be careful of and where they are in districts. So the nuance here, B4 is allowed. And even if we said this falls under the medical, you notice the professional office didn't have any term, even examples of a doctor, dentist, things like that. Clinic does. Clinic doesn't really separate out the scale, from a like single shop owner seeing one patient at a time versus the hospital at the far extreme. So B4, someone can't come to the board for a clinic. That use in clinic is, that it's just vacant in our use table, can't even ask for that. So what we're kind of establishing here is there should be another category. That can be amendments that allow that, or we can send them all to the Board of Adjustment when it's in that, and be able to vet the particular use in that particular site. So we are recommending this case. It could create a precedent, and I want y'all to think about that and what guidance there might be for staff, which way to handle it. Do we want all those coming to Board of Adjustment? That can be there's a lot of volume, that could come out of that. Or do we need to look at our zoning amendment or a potential zoning amendment to create a separate category for this smaller scale medical use that fits in within the same area as professional office use does? So, and if there's any questions on that, I'm trying to take long conversations and really a myriad of potential problems and summarize it.
But one does not depend on the other. I mean, we're here to approve or not approve this, but the other is a separate issue that we will address.
The other is a separate issue, except for the precedent we create by this coming to you with a medical use that could be defined as clinic, and they can't come to this board and ask for anything. But by it being a medical office, we're painting it in the picture of the use not provided for in the table. And that allows us to come look at this one at a time. Where I fear, in the really critical thinking part of my brain, is we have turned down some, I say doc in the box because it's a generic term, but I think we all know what we mean. They're contract doctors there, and it's whoever they can get, and there's a lot of volume. We have turned those down in B4. I don't think, in my opinion, that opens a door for, I think that's very clearly a clinic, and they can't come to B4.
So I guess my question with what you're asking is, what defines this as medical versus non-medical? If it's a counseling office that is counseling it's a Christian counselor, what's different? I understand this is a mental health, and I'm sure the person that's going to come up here and describe all these things to us, but
Right.
But in the big picture, if it's a counseling office, how is that necessarily a medical, unless that person is providing prescriptions or doing clinical pieces? It's really more like a counseling thing, and that to me is a professional office use versus it being a medical use. And I think
How
that's,
does that set a precedent?
yeah.
I think you're spot on. This is almost appears planned because I think that's what we worry about with the press. Why are we saying this is different from any other potential medical use? And a volume. Sometimes it's about volume. It could be counseling, but there's 80 doctors, and we're having that's a little different use. But I think that this happens to be medical only because of the specific counselor going in this building. But it could be a religious-based counseling, something like that would be completely fine. So what we're really looking at, and part of what we're here for, is to make sure it's not problems from neighbors, but we also have, okay, how do we the next person that comes in, what's the difference? Why did we take this as a use not provided for, but that, you know,
Couldn't you argue volume? I mean, you mentioned it. right?
that if we were to go in and make amendments, that would be where, in some situation, that's where we would
Draw the
lean to.
line, right.
Yeah, I mean, and we've been looking at all over the country. We've had to write one in the past. You looked at it like hours of operation, you
Right.
know, anything that's extended hours in the evening or weekends, that's clinic. You know, professional office, it's kind of the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, or, you know, in general. You do look at it in volume. That gets a little trickier. What do you tie to volume? Traffic, parking spaces, square feet, you know, how many doctors are in there? That kind of gets a little bit tricky, but you can also do that. And then we went and kind of looked at the history of what was going on at the time that this order was written. The city was coming up with 4 medical areas, including what one evolved into the medical overlay district. But there was 4 medical boards being established, and 2 never established. One is kind of a homestead that was established. One project kind of got approved, and then that board never met again. So, you know, there is some logic that says, no, everything related to medical should be one of those areas, and we have it zoned that way.
You know, in this site specific too, you got residential on this site, basically.
Yeah.
So you don't want a high volume, weekend, 24-hour operation kind of thing, right? I mean, so can you use that going down the road as a way to limit what you do?
Well, I think the answer is either drawing the criteria a little bit clearer, so what can come to you, what cannot, or just amending it where if we don't mind these low volume, more professional related medical offices, we allow it by right, just like we do professional offices. We just have standards to make sure they're met. I think that's 2 ways. But from a precedent issue, I think being in a PUD is certainly one aspect of this. The owners of the PUD have a say-so. I mean, theoretically, we could go amend the PUD to allow this specific use. I think that's a little laborious in this scenario. But yes, that and kind of the things we're talking about and putting on record right now give us guidance to say no when the next person comes in that's not quite this same project but still wants the same procedural review. So that's why we're having the conversation. I think what we're doing right now is helpful for that.
My inclination is to take each item as it comes up and deal with it and compare it, I guess, to what we have approved before or denied and see where it fits in, just as they come up. You're thinking we're going to get a volume of these? We've never had a volume, but
I'll have another conversation, but we have seen with the new shopping centers and kind of what's happening on 181 that's annexed into the city, there's a lot of just standard B2 and commercial lots being created. Just within the 2 Publix developments themselves, we had one in front of you, October. Then the next month on 181 was another one. Now those were kind of, those sat in an area that was clinic getting approved. This is a little different. This is in B4 where a clinic's not allowed.
right.
So we need to have something at least where, you know, we can establish if we want. So the real question here is we're allowing now medical in B4. And we looked and there's some around. This is not the only thing. So I don't know if that happened before properties were zoned the way they are or what was happening, but we will certainly be bringing anything that triggers clinic under review, and we might get some more of those. That doesn't bother me. I mean, they're usually pretty easy reviews and make staff recommendations on for the use itself. in clinics. It gives us kind of a, what I think that's there more for is the volume. You know, if there is a use that, hey, well, this is gonna cause problems, because of some unknown, or, that could be traffic noise. I mean, we looked at veterinary, you know, they're fine, and dog kennels are fine in some areas, but maybe not right up against the residential area. Same thing can apply on some clinics. But
So is this something we can approve with conditions as far as volume?
what we're approving here is, the square footage is already there. It's tied to the space as it is today. So certainly if, you know, building permits come in and adding more units or things like that, or it merges with the other, we will bring it back because it's just an extension of that use. So I don't think conditions would be necessary on this one. I would rather, is this a duplex unit?
There's a, like, you know, one side has got about, I think, 6 or 7 spaces, and the other side, they office spaces individually.
Okay. So theoretically, if, you know, they moved into the other square foot, we'd have to look at that because it's a separate address, and that would be a use that would have to get approved for that address as well. And I'd prefer to do it that way instead of conditions to let the expansion happen. Okay.
At this time, would the applicant like to come and add anything? If you'll come up to the mic and state your name for us, please.
So my name's Ashley Strickland. Laura's my first name, but I go by Ashley. I would say as far as medical, you know, we were going over kind of what this would look like. I wouldn't really put anything under, you know, medical as far as what I would do. If there's anything more serious, like serious mental illness, it would be a referral out. So there's no writing prescriptions. There's nothing of that nature. And I did my internship in Atmore. It was a pretty big place for like mental health services, and I would say at most people would see maybe 4 to 5, maybe 6 clients a day. So typically that would be as big as, you know, the volume would get at that point. Sometimes people will do weekend sessions, but typically not. So they might only function 4 days a week. So as far as volume, that would be as big as it would get. I would say the only other exceptions would be something like a community mental health, but that would be more of the clinic, I think, that you guys are mentioning, is as far as like it's a huge building, you got several people coming in and out, and that would be definitely a little bit more volume. But as far as for what I would like it to be, I would say professional services would be more of the category I feel like I would fall under. So just, you know, one-on-one with clients. I don't really do couples or anything like that. So typically it's just one-on-one counseling services. That's it.
And typically during Monday, Friday,
I would say when I was doing my internship, yes, Monday through Friday. I really didn't ever see any clients past 6 o'clock, so pretty standard working hours. And if people do ever call, if it's an emergency, I would also refer them out. Like I tell them I'm not an emergency facility. If you need an emergency facility, it would be the hospital or something like that if they're in dire circumstances. Any other questions or anything?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This time, I'd like to open the public portion of the meeting. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak for or against this request? All right, we'll close the public portion. Members, do y'all have a motion or any other comments?
motion to approve.
I second.
Okay, take a roll call vote. Ryan?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank y'all. Is there any other business, any meetings for next month?
We do have a carryover.
Right.
We're gonna have 2 on this month, so there is a carryover. I don't think we've got the revisions and plans. I know Mike was, and he's not here. I know he was kind of working through some of the details of that.
Okay.
So, and that was the only one?
So
we get all
can they
that in.
carry it over one more month?
It never made it to the agenda, kind of from our deadlines. we have a deadline for the meeting, and then somewhere into the month, okay, if there's revisions required, we need time to put status reports together. So if they can make that deadline, they're on the agenda.
Okay.
So what I meant by carryover on that one is they didn't get us a deadline last month for us to, in time for us to get all the staff reports. So, they've got some time. to
This
do
time.
that for the next month.
All right.
So hopefully that'll be there, but I can't guarantee it. But that is the only application we have right now.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.